without further ado, I'll give you Jessica Katz. The floor is yours, Jessica. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take over that sharing. All right. So first I want to find out a little bit more about you, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me. If you are actively an Agile coach, actually, you know what? I'm not going to share for a minute. If you are actively an Agile coach, please use the thumbs up reaction so I know how many of you I've got in the room. And if you are an aspiring Agile coach or just curious about Agile coaching, give me a little heart emoji. Well, this survey was intended for you. So for the rest of you that are here, that are not an Agile coach or an aspiring Agile coach, I hope maybe you get interested as we talk this evening. First, let me tell a little bit about myself. My name is Jessica Katz, which I guess you already know, and I run a consulting company, and I do Agile coaching and enterprise Agile coach or Agile transformations, all the way down to professional individual coaching. And I also do a bunch of training in the Agile industry with one of my partners, SoftEd, providing classes to their clients and to the public in the IC Agile space. I've been an Agile coach since 2014 and been in agility for longer than I like to admit. And that's a little bit about my background. And as I was starting my own business and trying to figure out what my pricing scheme looked like, I realized that there wasn't a whole lot of information out there on the Agile coach in Agile coach income space, which was my first motivator for this. But ultimately, I decided what we needed was more transparency. This is a little bit of us drinking our own champagne. So I was going for some transparency in our income. So this first and foremost is that Agile coaches can better negotiate their rates and salary. And also so the Agile community can face any inequities or biases that might exist in our pay. And then as an extra bonus for recruiters and organizations that hire Agile coaches, maybe they can be more informed about the cost for Agile coaching. Does anybody have any questions about me or my company or why I did a report at all before I dive in? Well, I'm going to throw a bunch of data at you tonight, and I'm going to be looking a lot at the people who have their cameras on to see if it's landing for you, since I can't see anyone else. If you want your reaction to be something I'm responding to, please turn on your camera. Otherwise, feel free to stay off camera. I'm going to ask if one of the organizers will keep an eye on chat in case a question pops up there. Please just interrupt me with it. I'm going to offer that to the rest of the audience as well. Feel free to interrupt me and ask me a question. If it ends up in chat, I probably won't see it while I'm talking. So, but if the folks in the room could pay close attention to that, that would be great.
We'll get you covered, Jessica.
Thank you. The other thing I will say is that this is my first round of doing this report, and I plan to do it again next year. And I will provide some links to see the full report and to sign up for the mailing list so you can be informed and take part in it next year as well if you're interested by the time we get to the end. And as a result, I also am being agile about it and have learned a lot of things. So I have presented on this once already and got a great deal of questions, and I'll be looking for some audience feedback at the end to find out what else you'd want to know about an Agile coach's income. Cool. Any questions from here before I dive in?
There is one from the audience. Is this based on client bill-through rates? In case where a coach is engaged via an agency or a partner, the coach's bill rate might be quite different than the customer's exposed rate.
That is a really good question, and it's now on my retro to add clarification around that in next year's survey. I have, in fact, actually, let me just dive into the next slide. So this is the demographics. We're going to start first with demographics. So we asked for full-time employed salary. We asked for self-employed. And then other were things like part-time. One person was on a sabbatical. There were a couple of folks that were unemployed at the time. So there's a couple of anomalies. We don't spend a lot of time in their data because there's only 8 of them. This survey was done at the end of 2019, so this is before the pandemic. I guess I'll be able to compare 2019 to 2020 next year. I'm sorry, this was done, is that right? No, this was done in the pandemic. I just completely forgotten 2020 happened. This was done right at the end of 2020, so I do not have data before this. The data comparisons to the State of Agile report and the recently released State of Agile coaching report that came out from the Scrum Alliance and the Business Agility Institute, they seem to correlate. We have different data and different sources, and I'll get into some of that as we go along. All right, so we had 156 people complete this survey. I did reach out to IC Agile and asked how many people are certified as Agile coaches or Agile coach experts, and they said about 100. So this probably isn't a bad spread if we were just talking about IC Agile. It is fair to say that it went out to my network and to anybody in my network who bothered to trade it along, right? So is this just me running a report? I didn't have a big arm like Scrum Alliance and Business Agility Institute. I didn't have IC Agile supporting this with me. I'm hoping to collaborate with maybe the Agile, get a bigger split. And like I said, at the end, you have an opportunity to sign up for the mailing list. So this is global. And speaking of that, here's what those numbers look like. So our majority of people that responded to this were in the United States, with about 12, almost 13% in India. This happened because I had somebody in my network who's in India and he spread it in his network. And that's just kind of how these surveys go. Inside the United States, the majority are in Texas and so the Virginia, Tennessee, and California areas. Doesn't really surprise me that Tennessee got so high since I live here. And I'm sort of the common denominator for how this spread. As you can see, the Northeast didn't pick up in the New England area. We didn't get a whole lot of folks there. So I'm hoping that your exposure to this will bring greater exposure to the survey next year. But I can tell you this data across what we know of the United States today. All right, I'm going to stop reading chat. There's a lot of information based on chat. I'm going to close chat so that I can just run through this. Do interrupt me if you've got a question. Any questions? Yeah.
Quick question. There's a question in the audience. If you have data from before the pandemic and after.
I don't have a comparison yet. I'm hoping that when I run the survey at the end of 2021, I'll be able to do a comparison 2020 to 2021. So we'll just see how that goes. Cool. Anything else before I move? All right. Additionally, in our demographics, from a diversity perspective, the majority of the respondents did fall into the white or Caucasian space. One thing that is going to change on the survey is we're going to call this race or ethnicity and get a little more clarification in some areas that get classified as white or Caucasian, but probably need to be called out. Things like Middle Eastern and those sorts of things need a better call out. So we're going to do some shifting here to make this a little more representative of what's truly happening. But the second group was the Asian or Pacific Islander. Folks in India fall into this bucket, so it's not a huge surprise that that one is large. And then you can see we've got Hispanic or Latino, Black or African American, multiracial or biracial, and then prefer not to say. In this section of demographics specifically, one of the comments I got on the survey was, why do we even need to know this? And in the report itself, I linked to several data sources that indicate the pay discrepancy that happens across age, gender, and race or ethnicity. And that is why we need to know this. So if it's unclear by the time we get to the end of the survey, I'm happy to talk about that more. I know it's a slightly uncomfortable topic, but I'm trying to do the best I can to represent not just one sector or homogenize the whole group. I think it's important to have that delineation. So that's our race delineation. And then you can see from the age group, we have 36 to 45 and 46 to 55 really are our big group of people. That makes some sense to me, given that Agile coaching is usually an extended career. It happens later in the career, not right out of college or early in your path. And then we have 72% male, 20, almost 26% female, and then 1.92% preferred not to say. They did have the option to give other gender classifications and did not. Okay. All right. Any questions here? All right. So those are our demographics. Here is what salary looks like around the globe. Now, this is one of the things I have to change next year. I had them give me a range. What range do you make? And then I asked them what currency code they're using. And because we did a range and I did the different currency codes, I couldn't translate it. So you'll have to do a little self-translation here. I apologize for that. The majority, this bucket here of yellow is Northern America, which includes the US and Canada. And this big bucket down here has primarily India in it, Southern Asia. So that is a good look there. I suspect, given the numbers I saw in the India group, even though they said they were using rupees, is that right? Rupees. Okay, good. I got the head nods. All right. Even though they said they were using rupees, it read, when I compared it to the median in India, it looks like they were using USD, even though they get paid in rupees. Just as a understanding there that there might be some mix-ups in the data reporting. Since we're in Northern America, I'm going to stay primarily focused in that space, but I think it's interesting to see what the Indian salaries look like and how that counterbalances with our country. All right, questions here? So this is full-time. Let's wander over to self-employed for a moment. So these are people that identified as self-employed or freelance, not necessarily people that are working for a consulting firm. I'm going to delineate that next year. But this year we have full-time and we have self-employed. The Agile coach rates, they could just say, this is what I charge, or they could give a range. In the cases of where they gave a range, I took both the lowest and the highest in the numbers. So we get the whole spectrum there. If we did some fun math and we said they only work 20 billable hours per week, then an Agile coach comes in somewhere between 151 to 168 a year. Some of the higher numbers in here did go up to, so the max in the Agile coach rate came out to $364,000 a year. I have talked to a colleague of mine who works and lives in California, and he reports having made $300,000 annually. So that seems to be on par. I checked in with a couple of other freelancers to see if that was running where they were running. On the enterprise Agile coach rates, you see that bumps up just a little bit by about 20,000 on the low end. The max in that space was 520,000 a year if we use this math. All right, questions here?
Yeah, so Jessica, this is self-employed rates. So these are people who are independent consultants, not working through a consulting firm?
Correct. The folks working through a consulting firm most likely reported under full-time.
Okay.
Because they're full-time employed by a consulting firm who's billing them out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions here? If you go to the report itself, there are several other services that we called out for Agile coaches who are freelance, things like professional coaching, in other words, coaching individuals, training services, course creation, Agile coach, Scrum Master roles, because that's I don't know about the rest of you, but in Tennessee, that's what they hire for here, Scrum Master Agile coaches, product owner Agile coaches and engineer Agile coaches. We pulled all that out so we could have those rates. Given what I was presenting on today, I decided not to give every single grid that I had and just focus on these two, but that is in the report. And again, I'll give you that link at the end of the talk today. So you can see more information there. If any of you are full-time employed and just went, ooh, that would be nice to make that much money, I would like to remind you that self-employed people have to pay their own benefits. So we're paying for our own insurance and retirement funds and so on and so forth. So some of that comes out in the wash. One thing I will do next year, so I don't have to do funny math, is to actually ask people, self-employed people, straight out, what was your income last year? Cool. Any questions here before I move on? All right, so now we get to look at some of the comparisons across diversities. So this is the gender comparison. Over here in the top right is the people who are employed full-time, and this grid here in the middle is self-employed folks. One of the interesting takeaways that seem to be here is that on the full-time, folks who identify as female seem to have a hard time bumping over the $150,000 mark, that there does seem to be some sort of wall there. Again, we want to consider that this yellow here, this under 70K, is most likely India. But in this range, where US is most likely paid, women are having a hard time getting over that particular wall. But if you go down here to self-employed and you look at the hourly rate that a female charges and an hourly rate that a male charges, women appear to be charging more than men and getting paid for it, which is kind of cool. I'm now doing a little investigation on what would cause that difference. Why is it easier for us to get paid more when we work for ourselves? So I have some conversations going on with some folks around transparency in the hiring process and how that can or cannot help or hinder one's ability to negotiate for themselves. It's just speculation at this point, but that's where I'm headed in that speculation. Any questions here?
There is one in the chat. Roughly how many people are in each slice? Trying to understand which have statistically significant samples.
So we had about 72% male, 25% female, and we had about 73% full-time and 21% self-employed. And I don't have the math off the top of my head about how many are in each slice, but that gives you some idea. Whoever asked that, if you want to note those numbers real quick, 73 full-time, almost 74 full-time, 21 self-employed. And then we had almost 26 female and 72 male percentage wise.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Cool. I did a little check on statistical validity, and I would say we have plus or minus, if I remember correctly. I have to look at the report to be sure because I wrote it down and then forgot. I think it's plus or minus 7 in the full-time employed, and it's plus or minus 10 in the self-employed is my recollection.
I think you have to actually segment not only the salary averages by, like, because there's such high differentiation in terms, or differences from Texas versus, I think somebody said it, in California. Did you try to adjust for that?
The numbers weren't very significant once I started slicing one more time. So I could probably, if I got some more responses next year, maybe I could get there. But if we go back up to this guy, 17% in Texas, 17% of 156. Let me do really quick math. It's only, 26 people. So it's real hard to slice by state or by region once I got there.
Yeah, I think I mean, clearly you have to get more larger sample sizes, but you'd have to be able to slice both regionally and then by gender too, right? Because I think you're getting some smoothing out that I suspect probably doesn't exist.
Possibly. One thing that is true, my personal experience at the self-employment side of things, anecdotally, I think it's absolutely true at the salaried space, but at the freelance contractor rate, these numbers tend to be more global. Like I have a tendency to work not just in Tennessee. In fact, I work the least in Tennessee. Right now I'm working a lot on the East Coast, some on the West Coast, a bunch in Europe. So my numbers become really global and less regional. So there, I hear you, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to get to that, I think.
And also a comment, Jessica, I think is this the first time you ran this report?
Totally.
Right, so I think that we're learning along with you, so.
Yes, you absolutely are learning along with me. And it's just me. It's just, I felt like our industry needed more transparency. And so I did a thing. It's just me. So I'm really open to other like more deeply skilled data scientists to come join me, or people who have done these kind of surveys before that want to do look through the survey and give me suggestions for how to word things or how to better shape things. I'm really open to that feedback. And my last slide is how to contact me. So if you're interested in being engaged that way, just reach out and I'm happy to engage you when we get to next year's. It's totally a labor of love though. There's no money in it. Just doing it because I think we need it. Okay. Cool. All right, so let's look at race, recognizing that this needs to be race and ethnicity, but race. So once again, we see so the numbers were small enough in these groups, in African American, Hispanic, and Latino, and multiracial. The numbers were smaller enough in that group that I grouped them. So I grouped them and left the Asian and Pacific Islander out as their own group because I had a larger number there. And then the white Caucasian. Once again, we see white Caucasian gets us over 150 easier. We do see this gets a little higher than the female to male ratio here. And again, the majority of the Asian and Pacific Islander were in India, so they have a lower rate in general. And then once again, when we get down to this on the self-employed space, we see that people of color seem to be able to negotiate equal or higher rates for themselves.
So I have a lot of comments, not because, and I don't want you to think that I'm trying to challenge any of this. It's because I think what you're doing is so tremendous, right? The exposure of salary information. I think actually it's changed in Massachusetts, right? It used to be something that people don't want to talk about salary. Your employer tells you not to talk about salary, and that's definitely shifting. What I would find interesting, and I don't know if you did this, is whether or not you try to adjust for how many years they've been a coach, right? Meaning the longer you're in the profession, the higher you might be able to command rates, right? And so that might be an interesting thing, or maybe you did it and you're about to show us.
I did, it's coming soon.
Okay, great, all right, terrific. Yeah, no, I still want to let you know, it's just a tremendous effort that you've put here, right? I'm so interested in this.
I appreciate it. And I did, in fact, the number one differentiator is how long you've been in the industry. So we're going to get a look at that here in a little bit, but let me finish going through the diversity spaces first, and then we'll move on to that. So this one is age. So people over 46 tend to get paid more. People on 45 and under tend to get paid less. That seems about right and lines up with what you were talking about, Mimi. The longer you've been in an industry, the more likely you are to get paid more. When we look at negotiated salaries, though, it does seem that people 45 and under might be better skilled at negotiating in the current market. I'm not sure what that's about. I'm right in that. I'm almost over the line there, so I'm not sure what that's about. But it might be that folks that are younger are slightly more skilled at negotiating their rates. All right. sliding on from here, here's the experience thing you were looking for. So when we look at experience, and I will let you know that in this, we had a couple of like the people that have been with Agile since the beginning took this survey. I'm pretty sure folks like Lisa Adkins and a couple of others that have been in, like created it, have been in this. So we have just a few that are 16 years or more in the industry. The majority seem to be a little closer into the 5 to 10 year range, seem to be where things lie. And you can sort of see what the numbers do here. So this is salaried employees and this is self-employed. I'm not going to comment, I'm just going to let you look at it. So any questions or observations here or things you think I could do differently? All right. This experience years in the field was the number, and this is number of years in Agile on the top line as an Agile coach and then as an enterprise coach. So this is like number of years in agility also makes a big difference. Here's some of the certifying bodies that we all go to for certification. Number one here was IC Agile, followed shortly by Scrum Alliance and then SAFE. I think my particular network of people is tilted towards IC Agile because of my involvement in IC Agile. I don't know if this is representative of the reality of all certifications everywhere, but that is my, I know that bias exists in the data just because of who I'm connected to. So I want to make that really clear. The data I'm about to give you is specifically around just these three organizations, but I think it's interesting to note that the PMI and Scrum.org were also pretty high up there. Also,
Jessica,
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
A really quick question. A few years back, I was teaching for an IC Agile provider for a couple of years, did like 42 classes, 700 people. And of that, I would have to go back and check the logs, but I think I taught the coaching class to something like 24 coaches, maybe 3 over the course of those couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought you said that they came back and said they only had 100 certified coaches. Maybe I misunderstood. That doesn't make sense to me.
That's what I heard. It didn't make sense to me either, but I'm not living in their books. So
because I can't imagine I taught a third of their certified coaching community, you know?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I hear you.
If so, that things are very different than I thought over there. Thank you.
I see a hand raised.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah.
Yes, appreciate all this. It's wonderful. Earlier in the presentation, you had said that you had kind of taken out, Scrum Master versus Coach delineation and done considered everything under an Agile coach because some of the hiring in Tennessee is around, like you said, Scrum Master and Agile coach. Is the certification specifically question was for coach, or is it just a Scrum Master certification also baked into the numbers?
Well, when I asked the certification question, first I asked which certifying bodies do you have certifications from? And then I said, okay, now that you've checked IC Agile, which of these certifications do you have? Now that you've checked Scrum Alliance, which of these certifications do you have? And on the report, you can find more information about how they answered that. The majority of the certifications under Scrum Alliance are Scrum Master certifications.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So that is absolutely true.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right, so this is self-employed people, and we have 2 different charts here. So the one on the right is IC Agile, SAFE, and Scrum Alliance. And the one down here on the left is bachelor's or less, and master's or higher. And I did say or equivalent. So if they got some certification, some collegiate education that classifies in that range. Arnold, did you have a question?
Yes, one question is specific on PMI.
Yeah.
Is that PMI ACP only or also including the DA?
I didn't put that data in the report, but on PMI, the same thing happened. I said, are you certified do you have the certifying body? And if they check PMI, I listed all the certifications I knew that PMI offered. And then also offered an other spot. So if you're interested in that data and you email me, I can pull that information out for you.
Okay. Now that also including PMP or just PMI ACP?
PMP, PMI ACP, PMI program manager, and I listed the whole kit and caboodle. So if you're interested in knowing how people certify inside PMI, just drop me an email. It's not in my report, but drop me an email to get it for you.
All right, thank you.
All right, so something sort of of interest here. It looks like Scrum Alliance and IC Agile tend to pay a little higher from a rates perspective than SAFE. But also one thing that another colleague of mine said, I'm interested in some information, and he was asking, folks that are certified or ICE certified in IC Agile, what other certifications they have. And we see an uptick for them in things like professional coaching certifications and professional facilitation certifications. And there's, in the self-employed space, there's a pretty big divide around your opinions on SAFE. Some people don't bother to get the certification, or they get the certification, then they let it lapse because it's $1,000 every year to renew, that sort of thing. So I think there's a little bit like, if the self-employed people overall saw more value in having SAFE, they would. That again is just my assumptions, just me speculating, but that's the assumption I would make, having talked to other freelancers regularly. Okay. Also, it looks like folks with bachelor's or less seem to get rates higher than people with master's or doctorals. This might be because if folks with master's or doctorals stayed in school longer, they have less years of experience. That's a possibility. This is where things get wild. I didn't know how to present this data so that it was easy to read, so I apologize for that. This is where things get wild. You see here the SAFE, IC Agile, and Scrum Alliance for salaried folks, and then certification, or I'm sorry, education from universities or colleges here. As I got through this, I was just like, well, the number one differentiator seems to be years in the field. So there we are. All right, so this is my early retrospective. I have a whole ton of feedback I got the last time I gave this talk. I'm hoping to get a ton of feedback from you too. I'm going to give you an in presentation survey here in just a minute. But my first goal next year is to get more respondents. I'm hoping to collaborate with Agile Alliance and get them to do a mail out or an announcement about it. We'll see what happens. I'm also really open to partners on this. So if anybody wants to get in, is excited about the data, geeks out about data like I do, and wants to get in on this, I would welcome the help. But these are some things that need to be, this first things that I knew needed to change. Like I need to request gross income before taxes for FTEs and any information that FTEs might have. And I really do need to find out it's great that I know your rates as a self-employed person, but how much do you make a year? I don't have that information. I made some guesses. And I'd be curious to see what that number looks like. And then I would like to answer these questions. Is it true that contractors can negotiate better than pay than FTEs, and why? Right. That I'm really curious about that. And I'm hoping getting more respondents next year will increase that information.
Have you thought, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but have you thought that contractors are usually engaged for a period of time? The company doesn't actually have to pay you benefits, whereas somebody who was an Agile coach as an FTE in a company is there for, is an employee, right? So they're not necessarily addressing a problem. I mean, in general, contractors get higher rates, right? But they're there all the time.
Yeah, in general, they do. I'm real interested why at the diversity levels that we have almost a flip in the disparity of what you would expect in contractor rates, and then exactly what you would expect in full-time rates based on the information we hear about pay gaps. So like that whole nugget of stuff is really juicy for me. I don't know how to answer it yet, but that's really juicy for me.
I think you'd have to analyze it relative to their average length of engagement.
Okay.
I would challenge that most people who are contract Agile coaches are not there for more than 2 years. I'm fully speculating.
No, I would agree. It's a good speculation and a good question to add. I see a hand up. Garang?
Yep. Garang. Yep. Thank you
Yep.
again. Is there a reason why for self-employed, it's about the rate and not the income? Because, to the point Mimi was making, and, just generally, if they are doing multiple gigs in a year, wouldn't their income be equally helpful in determining, some additional insights into?
Totally. It was a blind spot in the way I set up the initial survey. I was looking for how do we negotiate things better, and self-employed people don't negotiate annual salaries. So I just didn't ask. So I'm going to fix it next year. That is that was the hole I fell into. Actually, I'm real interested to hear what your questions might be if you were doing this survey. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. You can also just go to this link that's listed on the board. I'm going to put this link in this chat, and I would love to hear what questions you have that relate to the data and what you might ask had you been writing the survey.
I don't want to join Slido, but the thing that I think is interesting is the rate of increase over time, right? So let's say there's somebody who's been in the business for 20 years. Have they seen a 20% increase in what is their salary progression, I think is the question, right? And then I think the other thing that you didn't ask for that I think is very interesting is it only in software? Like, what are the different either domains or specific industries? You could ask for that. I didn't see that slice in your analysis.
I did not get that slice. That's correct.
What I'm hearing is that maybe Mimi may volunteer in the next coaching report. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, I love how you managed to rope me into a volunteer thing. Oh, that's
hey, I mean, it sounds like you have some insights, and Jessica's trying to collecting feedback. She's aware of exposing her blind spots, and I'm inviting anyone here if they can help this wonderful work make it even better with all the slides that you would like to see it. That would be a great opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely think that there has to be more crowdsourcing on this too, right? I feel like, Jessica, first of all, it's just tremendous that you wanted to do this. And I think it's so informative. The more we know about salary, the better armed we are with our own negotiations, right? So, it just doesn't have to be me. I have a lot of opinions about salary, but,
There will definitely be, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, as I get into this next year and I say something like, hey, I'm about to get into the survey for this next year, let me know if you want to be involved. That's a good way to do it. I certainly would love to have reviewers on the survey. I think I ended up with 2 in my group of 10 that I reached out to last year. 2 actually reviewed the survey. So I would love to get more of that. I do want to spend some time on some of these questions I'm seeing pop up over here. So tenure and current position, I can add that to the retro. Lowest rate you will accept, I can add that to the retro. For self-employed, I did not ask them if this was plus expenses. Most self-employed people get the client to pay for their expenses, either by charging more so they can afford their expenses or by getting reimbursed for expenses. And that's just really common for self-employed folks. Does pay rate vary with whether any of those previous years' experience were in a dev programming? That's an interesting question. Probably people that have been in higher paid roles. That's worth asking. I'll see what we get there. I think that plays into our salary progression question that Mimi was just bringing up, and I'm going to add it to my retro. What you have me doing over here is sticky noting stuff I'm going to put on my retrospective to make better next year. So just so you know, I am taking all of this in. I saw that question, how much travel is involved for independent consultants? How much do independent consultants pay for benefits and other expenses? Certainly worth asking. I have a family of 3 and we get insurance through the market, through the Affordable Care Act market. And I pay roughly $1,400 a month in insurance, if that gives you an idea. And we didn't get we didn't get the masterclass plan. We accepted a really high deductible to make that money happen. Industry, okay, I got industries written down. Further segmentation, I'm with you there. How often do you review your rates? Whoever asked that question, could you unpack that one for me a minute? What does that mean? Takers, okay, I'm not sure how to fit that one in. So if you want to send me a note later with that unpacks how often do you review your rates, daily rates, that would be great.
I didn't ask it, but I am guessing they are asking how often do you adjust your rates? Is it once a year? Is it once every 2 years? Does that help as a self-employed person?
Hi, Rosan. Thanks for jumping in. Yeah, actually, I was on mute. Yeah, that's exactly what I asked. So thanks for clarifying it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Breakdown by region, length of contracts, got that one. If FTE is, okay, that's a good one. FTE % of coaching.
I want to acknowledge that Jeffrey Wang raised his hand. I want to give him a chance to ask the question yourself, if you like.
Sure, thanks. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Yeah, I think by region and by city as well, because even though you're in a similar region, the city specifically, for example, Boston, New York City may be very different from upstate New York or some rural areas. And secondly, I think, Mimi, by your questions, it really seems like you really know your data. So I think you working with Jessica, that would be really, really great. I think you guys can break down the data very detailed. My third question, Jessica, is did you use any data from like Glassdoor or other internet sources to compile with your data, or these are just specifically data you acquired?
This is almost all data I acquired with the exception of exchange rates in the FTEs. I'm sorry, in the self-employed space, because they just gave me dollar amounts and they gave me their currency code. I could use exchange rates to translate it to USD.
Okay, thank you.
It would be nice to be able to get like another country just beyond India, right?
Right.
I don't know if any other Asian countries or Latin America or somebody in Europe. Did you have Europe? I can't remember.
Yeah, there was a little bit of Europe in there, and there's almost a little bit of everywhere going on in there, but there wasn't a lot of everywhere going on in there. I have a couple contacts now in Europe who have seen this since it's come out and been like, please tell me when the survey comes out again so I can spread it in my network. So I think Europe will grab it. And I work with SoftEd that's based in New Zealand. So New Zealand and Australia got a little bit of a bump too when I put this out. This is just, it's just a consequence of my network. So I'm really hoping to get this connected to somebody that has a broader reach than I personally do, so we can get more data on it.
I raise my hand again. If I'm
Okay.
speaking over anyone, just please stop me at any given time. Another question I have is, you broke it down to just Agile Coach and Enterprise Agile Coach. Will you be also breaking it down to the common roles such as Senior Agile Coach, Lead Agile Coach, the progression of seniority as well?
I did not slice it that way. I did ask for titles for folks who were full-time, and there were almost as many titles as there were people that responded to this thing. I did a little interpretation of the titles that summed it up into about, I think it was 5 or 6 categories. And I've linked the report here that you can go take a look at, which will give you a little more information on the kind of titles people gave me. Very few were like, I'm a senior, da 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 da. There was a few of those, but most of them are like, I'm an Agile coach, or I'm an enterprise coach, or I'm like some of them are like, I'm a VP of operations. I had a couple of those. So we had a little bit of everything going on in there.
Okay, and you categorized it by years. I saw, I think, less than 5 years, 6 to 9, etc., instead of using the roles instead, correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Joel, I see your hand up. What's up?
Yeah, I mean, I put this in chat. I think, we've had a lot of questions that have to do with more segmentation. To me, the big question is, how do we get the sample to like 10x or preferably 100x this size? Because until we do that, more slicing just gets down into where you got 1 or 2 or 3 people in each slice, and that's not really a thing. So one idea I had was, is there any way that you can get the certifying bodies interested in collaborating? Because that way they could market it to their networks and you get direct contact to the people who have the certifications.
That's my hope. I actually really want to get connected to Agile Alliance to do it, as opposed to the certifying bodies, because I, again, don't want to propagate a bias.
Yeah, true. As one example of, right? And the other part, frankly, is there are a lot of folks who live as Agile coaches, but don't actually have certifications of any sort, and aren't aligned with those places. So I wonder if maybe just getting a movement going on LinkedIn or something, arrange a campaign where a bunch of people drop the same thing at the same time or something.
I would love that. And here, as a result, I'm going to give you all the mailing list link. So if you want to know, when this next survey comes out so that you can help spread the word, please sign up there and I will notify you. I will probably do an email that says, I'm gearing up to get ready to do this survey. If you want to review the survey before it goes out or help add any insight, let me know. And I will also send a second one that says, all right, the survey's out. Here's the link. Spread the word.
Yeah. The other thing, if I could add one more thing, and realize I've already had 2, is my practice involves work with a number of folks. And so I don't have a single rate. There's 2 things. I don't have a single rate for hourly. And I'm mostly moving away from hourly, which makes it hard to enter in that construct. So yeah, there's a yearly number. But does that really tell you about anything about diversity? You know what I mean? So I don't know what to do with that, but I know a number of coaches who work with multiple folks over the course of a year. And so pinning down an industry is going to be hard, all that kind of stuff. So if we start asking, I guess what I'm saying is, if we start asking those questions, we have to ask the related questions to find out how valid those answers are.
Yeah, we're going to, just like when we take Agile into organizations and it uncovers all kinds of problems and new questions, I feel like I did the same thing with the survey. I was like, another
Thank you.
questions that came up. Let me spend a little time on what's going on here. These 2 questions here, there's a pay drop for people, 15 years of experience. Do you know the reason for that? I don't know more than I know the reason why self-employed women seem to negotiate better rates than self-employed men. I have no idea. Is there a correlation between coaches under 45 and their ability to negotiate and ageism? could be. I don't know that either. These are really interesting questions I would love to uncover, and I'm doing a little digging with some folks to see if there's a way for me to get that information.
Jessica, I have a question. When you say negotiating rates, right? So I feel like if an individual is a contractor under a vendor, the rates that they will get will probably be, I mean, not low, they're all making six figures, versus somebody who owns their own company and negotiate a rate. Is there a difference between those two? Because I would assume somebody who's negotiating under their own company would be paid significantly more than somebody who is working with a vendor.
When I asked the survey, I said, what do you charge for these services? Give me your rate, or give me your low to high, give me your range. And I also asked what they thought was a reasonable subcontractor markup, which indicates for me what they would expect that somebody that hires them in as a subcontractor, or if they hired in a subcontractor, what that difference would be. My range includes what I charged for subcontracting. So my low number is what I charge to be a subcontractor, and my high number is what I charge direct.
Will you be
occasionally had groups sort of slip and let me know when I'm doing contract through an agency, what their bill through rate is. I've occasionally stumbled on that number, and I'm here to tell you it's probably not what you expect. Sometimes the delta is huge.
Yeah. Perhaps you can post those numbers as well, right? I think those are good stats.
Yeah, take a look at the report. Take a look at the report, dig in. I think you'll find some of that subcontract rate stuff going on in there.
Jessica, a quick note. Peter Morris had to drop, but he asked me to pass along his thanks. Jessica, this is a hard task to try to cover. Thank you for your work.
Yeah. All right. So lots of these comments that came up are in my retro already. So I'm glad to see that those have more interest. This is a new one. Which org do you report into? So that will definitely be something I added. It's going to be a long survey next year.
Yeah, I think Jessica, you want to collect as much as you can, like from a demographic of the person, what kind of org they come, like how big is their company, if they're an employee, right? What industry, all of those kind of demographic questions, so that we have a better sense of who that person is in order to slice. But I do have to reiterate Joel's question, which is you got to get scale in order for you to get significance, right? Because we're asking all these questions, and then probably I think your next step of analysis is to make some inferences and correlations, right? So you're going to have sample sizes that are healthy enough so that you can make them, because that really would make it super interesting.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly. So this is how to reach me, by the way. If you're interested in being engaged in this more actively, you've got the mailing list link if you want to just be notified when things are happening. That's another way to go about it. And then if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, that's where I'll be announcing. One thing I did find out is like 96% of the people that answer the survey use LinkedIn primarily. Secondarily, it's Twitter, but it's a much lower percentage.
So, Jessica, one question that that I have is, did you find any correlation between the ability of coaches under 45 years old to negotiate better rates or salaries?
I don't. So,
well, so my theory is that there might be related to ageism, right? So what are your thoughts?
Well, ageism could be at play. My thoughts are the same as they are for gender and race, frankly. We just don't know. I didn't ask the questions that give me that kind of insight, and all I can do is speculate. It could be ageism. It could be that younger generations have learned the techniques to connect with people in a different way than older generations have. And so they have more skills at negotiating than older folks do. It could be that older folks, they're past the need for a lot of money, maybe like their kids are out of the house or coming out of the house. Who knows? I'm just speculating at this point. So it's all just guesswork.
Jessica, I have a suggestion for that actually.
Yeah.
I feel like a question you can ask is, what is their starting salary when they began their career as an agile coach? Because if they're older, maybe their starting salary was lower. So even when they do bargain, they're not going to bargain super high. Whereas a younger individual who has information about the average, they already start bargaining for a higher average at the start of their career and therefore can grow at a higher rate.
The one challenge we might have there is that I started as an agile coach on the side as being a scrum master. I wasn't getting paid as an agile coach, and it was many years ago. And I don't remember what my salary was. So I don't know. I might be able to figure it out, but I would have to go do research to do that. And then I'm going to get somebody disengaging from the survey entirely if they have to go look up something. So it's just, I think it's a good question, but I think I might have to make it optional.
Good. So there's a question from Nimat. Go ahead, Nimat.
Yes, I was going to make a comment about that age discussion that we're talking about. It's also like, if you think about industry-wide, like salary ranges go up, right? So those who started longer, even in my company, I know there are people who got hired after me. They were offered a higher salary because the salary range has moved up because of inflation or lifestyle changes. So sometimes it's very difficult to guess exactly why. It could be multiple reasons.
Could be a lot of reasons. Could be. Go ahead, Mimi, what you got?
How long is the survey window?
I made the survey. I opened the survey before Thanksgiving and I closed the survey at the end of January.
I think you need to make it longer. And there's probably the folks on this Scrum Alliance, this meeting would probably be able to tell you more, but maybe you want to keep it as a standing agenda item for every regional meeting or something like that, right? I think you have to be willing to survey for a lot longer in order for you to get, going back to Joel's thing.
Okay, how long do you think is enough?
I don't know. I'd say a year. I think it's crazy because you're gonna
ongoing
hit. You may have to hit different conferences too. That would be the other thing.
Yeah.
Like
until you get enough data, maybe.
Jessica, you're doing year by year anyway, so why don't you just keep it live and then you can just take a snapshot at any given point, right?
Yeah, keep it open for the year, and then whatever you get for the year is what you have for the total of the year.
Yeah. Perhaps Glassdoor will refer to you as the stats.
Yeah. I like that idea. I need to refine the survey. I think maybe I'll start with 6 months. and then I can look at doing that in 2022 because I didn't really prepare for that to be open all of 2021. That's the year we're in, right? Yes, I didn't prepare to be open for all of 2021, but I could probably do 6 months earlier. I'm just thinking about my time because it's just. Did I mention it's just me?
Yeah. There's a question from Melody. Melody, you're next.
Okay, yeah. There's just a comment on if you are asking about starting salaries, especially if you're talking to older consultants, you may want to ask them the year because depending on, Agile's been around long enough now that there may be a differentiation in dollars equivalents. Going back 15 years, they may be starting at, at a lower rate, but in dollars equivalents to now, if they're at a higher rate, it would be a higher equivalent.
Good point. Thank you, Melody.
Is it at this point? I'm just thinking about, relevance. What do we learn from it? If we go back, I'm not going to say how many years back when I started, but is that really relevant to go back like more than 5 or 10 years?
I don't know, but I could pull in inflation rates.
Yeah.
do some adjustments. One thing I can tell you is that this survey, just as it is, has already impacted conversations in several places. I've talked to several freelancers who looked at the rates and went, I need to increase my rates. Heck, I looked at the rates and went, I need to increase my rates. So, so those are some things that happened. I've also talked to someone who works in a consulting firm, and they and she just dropped the report inside their coaching channel in their whatever they're using, Teams, Slack, whatever it is, and it stirred up a whole bunch of conversation, and now their HR department is reevaluating scales. So I know that just this information can be really impactful, and that was what I wanted. I wanted to shift people's understanding of what we were getting paid, so that we could start getting more fair and equal pay.
Jessica, I think.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just quickly, Jessica, I think what you did is absolutely amazing. I really do think that you should just keep the survey open at all times. And usually it logs when the survey answers are taken. So you can take any snapshot at any given time. And I think it might hopefully make your life easier too.
I just wasn't ready for that feedback, so I have to now get ready. So it might be a little bit. I've got a busy May, June, and July, so it might be a little bit before I get it open. But I totally hear that.
I think that. Oh, sorry again.
Go ahead. Finish, Jeffrey. Finish.
Even if you're May, June, it's just an intake. So once you process that data at any given time, you just have more data, and you're doing the same thing. So.
I was going to say to this group that also I participated in this survey, right? And I actually read the report. So it might be a matter of, like, all of us here with all these great ideas that we have, that when Jessica runs the survey again, we can probably help by putting that survey in our LinkedIn network, and that would increase traffic, and that for sure will augment the size of the sample. So just wanted to.
Yeah, I would love to help out too. I think this is great. Absolutely great. Thank you, Jessica.
So before we go into a couple more questions, Jessica, if it's okay with you, I would like to take advantage that we have 60 plus participants, and I would like to run a short survey just to finish with take a couple more pointers. So if you guys go back to the Menti, and I can definitely put it here, just so that you grab it with, in case you don't have it open. I'm just gonna put it in here again, really briefly, that it looks like you guys have that.
But
okay.
But the survey doesn't include I'm a coach.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Surveys are challenging.
Yes.
Yes, they are.
just I had to,
just so everyone knows, I also copied out the chat. So if there were any questions I missed, I got them in chat, and I'll make sure they get included in the survey retro.
Okay, so the last, and again, thank you for participating. The last question from the feedback is going to remain open for days to come. So you don't have to do it now, but if you can, excuse me, share any additional feedback, it'll be open. It's the same Menti. Okay, you can give us.
Yeah, just one point of clarification there, probably for this one. I didn't do part-time Scrum Masters today. I did the outcomes versus outputs. So
Very well.
yeah, it's just a
Okay.
change there, but that was me.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
I'd also like to just let this group know, since I saw there were a few speakers on, the Music City Tech is doing their conference virtual. They have it's 3 conferences in one: Music City Code, Music City Agile, and Music City Data. And our call for speakers is out and the tickets are up. It's going to be a totally virtual conference. I'm going to stick that in chat in case anyone's interested.
Awesome.
I have a quick question. Where is your info, Jessica, if we are interested in helping you with the survey?
Stand by. I'll share my screen again.
Thank you.
Okay.
I may have taken a screenshot.
Those links were also added to the website on the event page.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I think it was very educational, very engaging. As you can see, the audience was intrigued. They were participating. So it looks like somebody else. Oh, David, please go ahead. One more question.
You might just be applauding.
Just an applaud, just a thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. I'm going to drop off and good luck with the rest of your evening. And hopefully I'll hear from some of you soon.